Hello everyone, and welcome to our TracerPlus Connect Out in the Field webinar. Okay, so what I'm going to talk about and show today is the use of Connect and how it can benefit you while your devices are out in the field. What I'm going to show you today is going to be sort of an HVAC type work order where you have different techs out in the field. And based on who they are, they only get work orders assigned to them. So you'll see in Connect, we can actually do source filtering, where we can control what data gets sent to the device. So you'll see in this image here, we have different routes with different names. So we can control, that Stan only gets Stan's route, Kate get Kate's route, and so on. It also gives you the ability to update drop-down information. So if you happen to add information to your back-end database while someone's out in the fields, you can either push that out to them and it can update a drop-down list, or they can just do a request or update that list from their side. And then also I'm going to show you the setting up of the wireless connection and how the device would actually communicate with the Connect software. So what I've done is loaded our Tech-in-the-Box application up to our mobile device. And it's mainly used to create work orders for HVAC type scenarios, or even if you have techs out in the field doing work orders, it could be converted to do that. So the first thing I have here is my mobile device. So if I go ahead and open TracerPlus, you'll see we're presented with a login screen. I'll talk a little bit more about that later, and how that can be used to kind of control what techs see and what they don't see. So here you're looking at our work order. So this is where the rep is actually going to go to a particular location. He'll see his list of work orders that he can choose from. Right now, you'll see that there's no work orders, as we haven't synced any data over yet. So I'm going to show you that when we how we can sync data over using the new Connect software. And we also have some other items that we're going to load to the device, such as a parts list we can reference, the actual list of work orders, as well as a customer list. So the first thing we want to do, or actually I've done already, is this is our work order project. I had gone ahead and deployed this over to the device. So in order to communicate with our Connect software, you need to set up the data integration section of TracerPlus Desktop. So it's pretty basic. You're basically just going to go to this data integration area, which is located directly under the project settings. Then you're going to click the plus button to add a host. I've already done that. And you can either enter in the IP address of the PC that Connect's running on, or you can enter the host name. Now since this is out in the field, most likely they're going to be connecting over a cellular or a WAN connection. So in order to do that, you would actually enter the IP address of your outside router port, or your WAN port on your router, or whatever your internet provider had given you. So that'll allow you to connect while you're outside of your internal network. Then what you would do is set up port forwarding on a router to point to this particular port 4403. So what that'll do is then once it sees that incoming transmission from the device, it sees that it's on port 4403. And then what that'll do is go ahead and forward that information over to the PC or the IP address you specify within that port forwarding. So that's how the actual remote syncing is done while out in the field. I don't have a cellular device, so I'm just going to sync via internal network today. But picture this would be happening over cellular or WAN. So the 4.12, this is the IP address of my computer that Connect's running on, and I'm going to send the data over on port 4403. Another thing I want to show you that I created is a sync form. So this is a way for the user to control the syncing of data on the device. So what I've done here is create 4 separate buttons. Let's say you have 4 techs. One's Stan, one's Kate, one's Rich, and one's Alphonse. And basically, when they press that button, it'll only get the work orders for Stan. And I'll show you how the profiles and how the filtering is tied to this actual sync form. Then we have our update list data. This allows you to sync your customer list, work order list, work order items, or part list and such. And then our send work orders is something they can press, at any given time, or maybe you want them to send it at the end of the day, where they can send their collected data over. So each of these buttons is actually defined as a button action of do sync. So that's just basically saying it's going to look to connect and it's going to do a sync based on these 2 parameters down here. So we have a host ID and then we have a profile ID. So if we go back to our data integration area, you'll see this host ID right here. That's the host ID that you're going to specify for this host ID on this form here. So you'll see we have a host ID of 1, and then it's telling you to sync to profile ID 6. So now if I bring up our Connect software, here's the actual list of profiles that I created to complete this work order task. So you'll see each one has a number up here in the left corner, profile ID 1, profile ID, and so on. Also, what I like to do as sort of a best practice is I'll even put the profile number in the profile name. So you'll see here 2-. So it's kind of it's easy to see if you're looking at this Profile Explorer what profile you're looking to connect to. So if I go back to our first profile here, this one's called Get Work Orders, basically for Stan. So what I've done is created a source and destination for this sync. So the source type is going to be ODBC, and I'm looking into my tech database, which is then we're going to pull from the work order list. So if I drag that table open here, here's an Access database that we're going to be syncing from. So if I don't open up the work order lists, this is the work order data that I'm going to look to sync over to the device. So you'll see in the first field here we have the different techs that are assigned to these work orders. So it looks like each of them have 2 work orders. And then various information about the work order, as well as some status and additional information that will be updated once the work order is completed. So that's what this source is pointing to. So our destination, I selected TracerPlus since we're syncing to the device. Then I was able to, using this folder icon, browse to the specific project that I was working with. So I selected my Tech in a Box project. Once I did that, I was presented with a list of sessions within that project. So for this particular one, I'm syncing to the work order list. So I have that selected here, and then we have session data. Now this is where the Connect really gets powerful. Now if you go to the options, you can actually add sync filters, or we call them source filtering. So what I've done for this particular profile is I want to sync work orders where the value equals Stan. So where the tech equals Stan. So I click the plus to add a source filter. I chose the tech field from the database. The comparison type we left as equals because we want it to match exactly. You'll see there are some other options there. And I entered in the value of Stan. So now when I sync this profile, it's only going to grab records that match a tech of Stan. So then also you'll see the same. I created a profile for Kate, and it's basically the exact same setup except that it's a tech equals Kate. Same for Rich, and the same for Alphonse. So you'll see these profiles are labeled 1, 2, 3, and 4. So now if we go back to desktop and look at that sync form, you'll see that this do sync of Stan, we have that sync profile ID set at 1. The sync profile for Kate is set to 2. Rich is set to 3. And Alphonse is set to 4. So that's how we can control when and what data is actually synced to the device while you're out in the field. So now if I go back, our fifth profile is just a profile that's going to sync all of our lists, or even update if new information has been added. So we're syncing our customer lists, same concept, we're going from ODBC, from my tech database, and we're syncing from the customer lists. And then the same in the destination, we selected the source of Tracer, or the destination of TracerPlus, chose the customer list session and its session data. And also, this is actually an example of how to sync dropdowns. Once again, we selected ODBC, our tech database, and I actually have a work done list, which is just a table with a list of different items, or basically different items of work that can be done on a work order. So what we want to do is sync those to 3 different drop-down lists. So once again, in my destination, I selected TracerPlus. I chose my project, and we want to sync to the work order session because this is where our drop-down fields are. So once we do that, you'll see this table actually shows session data as well as all the different drop-down data that's available. So this is going to list 1, so I chose this first work done drop-down. List 2 would go to the work done 2 drop-down, and list 3 goes to the work done 3 drop-down. And lastly, our 6th and final profile is actually going to control the data syncing back to the main office. So this is going to sync our actual work order data that we collected. It's going to sync work order items. This would be any parts that you used to complete that work order. And then it's going to update the work order lists. So if it was closed, it'll update the status of that as well as some other information. And then we're going to update the parts list because we're maintaining an inventory of items. So it'll update whatever we used. Okay, so now let me go back to, this is our synchronized screen here. This will show you any activity if anybody's currently syncing. And I'll go back to my device. And I'll just show you that our parts list currently doesn't have any information, as well as our work order lists and customer list. So if we go to our data syncing, this is the same screen that I just showed you in desktop. So your tech's going to come in here, and he can press the, if it's Stan, he can press the Stan button. So you'll see a little progress took place behind the scenes. Now if we go back to our work order list, you'll see that Stan's 2 work orders have been loaded to the device. Now, one other thing I want to show you with this is if, let's say he clicked Kate's by mistake. So that'll go ahead and do the sync. If we go back to our work order list, you'll see that now he has Kate's work orders, but as a little extra precautionary, if you noticed in the beginning that I actually logged into TracerPlus as the user Stan. So if we actually go to do a work order, that tech of Stan is actually tied to this session, so you'll see that if you happen to load the wrong person's work orders, you won't see anything on your open work orders list. So it'll kind of let the tech know that, you know, maybe I did sync the wrong data. So now if we go back and we sync Stan again, go back to work order, and we now see his 2 work orders. So one last thing I want to do is sync our lists. So let me go back to the syncing. Usually he would click Scan to load his work orders, and he would click this Update List Data. This will sync all the pertinent list information. So that's going through the 7 processes that we had in that 5th profile. And just to show you that they loaded, let me go to customer lists. We have 4 customers. If I go to our parts list, here's our list of different parts that we can use for the work orders. So now if I let's go ahead and do a work order. So what we'll do is select it from the grid. You'll see that it automatically populates the work order number, the customer, and what the reported problem is. There's a customer info where you can actually view their address. You can look at their equipment if you press this button. It'll show the different equipment they have. So if we click on it, it'll actually display in the fields below. And we'll click back to return to that screen. You could also see a service history if they had some closed work orders out there. Right now it doesn't look like he has any, so I'll hit back. So we'll return to the main screen and we'll go ahead and hit next. So these are 3 drop downs that I loaded from Connect. So we'll just choose, we'll say replace blower unit, and let's say a Freon recharge. So you'll see as I selected those, they added to this field down here. You could also manually type something if it didn't exist. You also have the option to take photos if you want to show any damage or maybe the work that you completed. So I'll just take a picture of the calendar on my desk here. Then we'll hit OK to accept that picture. And then the green check mark. Now we can add job labor info. So let's say he was, for 1 hour, he was doing an item replace, which carries a rate of 75, so that carries over to $75. And then we'll say for a half hour, he was doing an item service, which carries a different rate for a total of $22.50. Then let's say he used some parts on the work order. So if we could click Add Parts to Work Order, you can either key in or scan a barcode of a part number, enter a quantity used, and it shows our parts in the list that were used. We click back and we're ready to finish. We click the Finish Job. We have an additional comments field to make any comments about the work done or the work order itself. You could choose from a service type. You'll see our totals here: labor, parts, a subtotal. It calculates tax, and then it gives you a work order total. You can then choose a payment method. Then we go to this customer acknowledge. You can have them read this disclaimer. Then you could capture their signature. We'll click done. Then we'll save and close the work order. So now we go to start a new work order. You'll see that list has actually been filtered down to only open work orders. So once you close a work order, it actually gets removed from this filter based on that open versus closed status. So now if I were to exit this, let's say we want to sync that work order over, we'll go to Data Syncing. We'll go ahead and send work orders. So that's going to go through the 4 processes in that profile. You'll see some progress going on in the background. Now we also have a built-in data viewer for Connect, so you can quickly kind of view data that you're syncing over as opposed to opening the database. So if we go over to our 6th profile here, This is our sync work order, so this will show you the work order we just did. Has all the pertinent information, including any totals. We can also capture GPS latitude and longitude, but I'm inside, so I'm not getting a signal. We have our work order items, which shows you the parts, the quantity, and the price. We were also updating the part list and the work order list. So this was our work order list prior to doing this sync. If I refresh it, you'll see that that first work order now has a status of closed, the date it was closed. It captured the work that was done as well as the total amount of that work order. And then update the parts list. I used these first two items, so if I refresh, you'll see that that quantity went down to 18 and this one went down to 96. So if we go back to our device, let's say we have a different tech, so let's go ahead and log in as a different tech. So let's log in as Alphonse. So if we go here, we shouldn't see any information, since the data that's currently loaded to this particular device was for Stan. So if we go here, we should see no data in the grid. So now we'll go back. Oops, sorry, go to our data syncing, and we'll click the Alphonse button. We'll go back and do this other work order. Okay, choose Thomas Smith, and we go back to customer info. Once again, we can view the equipment and the service history. We'll go ahead and click next. Say we're just replacing an exhaust fan. Say that took us 1.5 hours. So that's a total of 112.50. We'll go back, we'll add a few parts to the order. We'll go ahead and finish the job. None in here. We'll say this was under service contract, so it was no charge. Once again, we'll get the customer signature. And we'll save and close the work order. So if we go to start new, you'll see that that work order has been removed from the list. So let's go back, we'll do another sync. Just click the send work orders. Okay, so if we come back and refresh this, we should see the third and fourth items update. Here's this work order has now been closed. We have some more items in our items table, and then we'll have a second work order here. Just to show you, this is the actual table in the work order. You'll see that this work order list was updated with the closed for both of those. As well as our work order parts were updated with those new quantities. One other thing I didn't show you, if we go to the configure area and under the sync work orders process, we have an advanced section here. This handles what or how the images and signatures are transferred over. Since I'm going to Access, there's no real image fields like a SQL database or MySQL. You can post directly to the database field. And it'll actually show up if you have some sort of reports or even a web form. But since I'm not, I can actually pick a location of where I want those files to go to. So I chose a work order images folder on my desktop. So if I open that folder, Here's the image from the first work order we took, as well as the signature and the signature from our second work order. So all of this was done syncing the device wirelessly. Picture collecting this information and syncing this data while you're out in the field, or while your tech's out in the field. The tech can initiate the sync, or you could even initiate syncs based on a timed interval. So maybe you wanted to give them an updated work order list or updated information every 2 hours or every 4 hours. You can set up these timed syncs in the data integration portion under the sync timers area. So you could actually add a sync timer. The interval is in seconds, and then you can choose which profile that timer should sync, as well as the host ID. So that pretty much concludes what I wanted to show today. I want to thank everybody for attending the webinar, and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.